Hi guys, and welcome back to another episode of Ezoic Publisher Profiles. Today, I'm talking to Brian May, owner of NPINumberLookup.org. We talked about the best practices for buying and selling websites online, and we also discussed how he purchased a data lookup tool website and grew it into a multi-million page view a month online business. Stay tuned for more. Brian, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Appreciate you having me here. The first question we like to ask everybody is, how did your journey as a digital publisher begin?
How did my publisher begin? Well, it was a rainy day, and no, I guess it started in different variations. Maybe I don't know, 12 or 13 years ago. I first had a couple of blogs. This was like the early days of WordPress, and shoot, I was still getting a lot of traffic from MySpace.
Wow.
Yeah,
That's
yeah,
awesome.
wow. Now I think about it, I had this not weird setup. I bought all these computers, and this was when you could kind of scrape or run these bots on MySpace a lot. So I had a bunch of different accounts and a bunch of different computers, all like posting things on people's page. Wow, most people won't remember it was like a Wild Wild West, right? They didn't have all the controls and things that
Yeah.
platforms have now, so you could do that. And it was a celebrity blog, and it did pretty well. A couple of things I did, like I partnered with some of my friends
Mm-hmm.
to create the content, and I'm kind of doing I was still posting more of the content, but also trying to figure out everything else that goes along with it. This was a time where they were still doing, people were trading links and adding you to their blog rolls,
Yep.
uh, just that whole time. And so, things are different now, but at that time, it was a lot to figure out, still a lot to figure out as far as publishing goes. But at that time, it was just so much. Like, I don't even know how I would do it differently if I did that today. I might have probably sold my friends on the vision a little bit stronger, just because, it wasn't really, it was making a little bit of money, but not much. This is when AdSense was early days too. So,
Mm-hmm.
it was unpredictable. Um, so yeah, that was that. And then have done a number of things over the years, but overall, like my experiences in digital marketing. I have a digital marketing agency, and where I manage a lot of paid search and paid social.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm very familiar with the space. I've worked in it probably 15 years, and those have been like side projects and stuff like that over the years, where I've just tested different things or bought different sites. I'm
Yeah.
probably going through the same cycle as everybody else, right? Great idea, hop out there, buy a domain, and most time never get to it. So
Yeah. Yeah. I've
you're
been
just
there.
renewing domain names, yeah. But overall, that was where I started.
Wow. Yeah. That's so funny you mentioned MySpace. It brings me back when I was in like 7th and 8th grade. I learned what cracks me up is like my friends who are younger than me now don't realize that like when we were like in middle school, early high school, like we were HTML coding on MySpace like for
Right.
layouts, and you mentioned those like trading links and those boards where you get put on and stuff like that. I remember some of that stuff when people would advertise their pages or their sites and stuff, and the trains and stuff. That's really interesting. You brought that back up, and it was quite the Wild West
Oh yeah,
back
yeah,
then. So for those who are watching, your website is NPINumberLookup.org. Is that
yeah.
right?
MPI numberlookup.org. Yes.
Okay, so how did you decide on that? I guess I don't want to say niche, but for those watching, what is an NPI number? Can you explain that to us?
Yeah. So MPI number is just I don't even know the official name, but it's basically an ID number for healthcare providers in the United States. So back in like 2007, it became required that every healthcare provider has to have a MPI number. So that's going to include like physicians, dentists, nurse practitioners, but also facilities. So the urgent cares, the emergency, they all have a unique identifier number that's used for a variety of different forms, probably insurance forms, Medicare, Medicaid is how they track all the different things. So just like you have a social security number,
Hmm.
think of basically a social security number for medical professionals and facilities.
Wow. That's interesting. Um, so my next question to you then is like, was there research before deciding to go down that route to create kind of like, is your website a database, so to speak?
Yeah, it's driven off of the database. Yep, there's a national provider database that the government provides. So yeah, it's driven off of that. And I didn't build the site. I bought the site.
Oh,
So
okay.
so it was a site that I saw it on one of the directories that I kind of look at to for sites for purchase. And when I saw it, so for my digital marketing agency, I work with healthcare organizations. So I was very familiar with the NPI number. So when it popped up, I'm like, oh, I know this space, and I've used that database before. But when I saw this site, there was a number of things about it. One, I understood it,
Yeah.
and how much people use it. It receives, obviously a good amount of traffic. But the other part was just that I could see where it was underperforming, where
Hmm.
the person who had it before, it wasn't his thing, right? He had built a site, it had run for years, but as things changed, it really wasn't his space in digital marketing and understanding that. So, I guess ran his course, and then he was like, okay, now's the time to sell it. So I bought it from him.
Yeah. That's really, really interesting that you, especially once you got it, you saw that it was underperforming and you were able to like go in and optimize. Really quickly, what sources do you use to look for websites and stuff like that? I know there might be some publishers listening who a lot of people know Empire Flippers and Flippa. Are there any others that you use?
Yeah, I look at those not even that much anymore.
Okay. Oh,
This
okay.
one, that one, just because those are, you got to weed through a decent amount of stuff on those,
Yes,
try to find stuff. Um,
absolutely. Absolutely.
the one I bought that one from is latonas.com. So LATONAS.com. They used to be really popular. It looks like they're kind of shrinking as far as popularity and
Okay.
availability of their listings. But the other two big ones are probably FEinternational.com. They
Okay.
have a lot of good listings, as well as quietlightbrokerage.com.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I appreciate that.
Yeah, those are probably
Um,
the two best listings I see right now, just as far as quality and vetted. Some of them are really expensive. I mean, I'd say that to begin with
naturally.
too. And it's a combination of, it's not just content publishing sites. There's also software as a service and other sites that they
Hmm.
have on their subscription type things. So
Well, that's good to know. Probably my biggest question now that we know, what is your site? How do you source that information? Is that something that the person who created the website got all that data? How, especially when it's something dealing with like healthcare numbers, you would think that's kind of like private information. How did you get that into a database? Do you mind touching on that a little bit?
uh, no, yeah, it's the government provides the database. It's not
Oh, okay. So is it
private.
like scraped? Is it scraped from that database or?
No, no, it's not even scraped. It's you can today go download the list. Uh,
Okay, I see what you're saying.
Now, if you honestly, if you download it to your computer, you're gonna have some problems because there's about 6 million rows. So unless your computer has a
Whew.
ton of RAM and it's
That's
got
a lot.
spices files up, yeah, it's a huge database, and it changes. I think they put out a update every 2 weeks. So the whole database doesn't change, but you got to change certain rows and things like that. But no, it's a publicly available government database, as there are, there's tons of government
Yes.
data sets. This is just one of them.
Okay. Yeah,
There-
they're
There's a bunch, there's tons of sites that are very similar to mine that
mhm.
list the physician profiles or,
Yep.
NPI numbers and everything associated with them. So my site's not unique by any means.
In that same vein, do you have any advice for publishers who are maybe considering making their site more geared to something that would be like evergreen, a list, a database, something where that information, you might be updating it, but the I guess the niche itself will not change over time. It's like pretty, uh, it's concrete. You have any advice in that realm of
Yeah.
maybe things you did to, like when you were mentioning about the guy that you bought it from? What did you do differently than the person that you bought it from did that you think improved your website? I think that'd be good.
A few things. One,
Yeah, go
uh,
ahead. Just go on a
yeah,
list it all.
from a monetization perspective, the first one was an easy fix. he was just running AdSense. So I switched to Ezoic. And that was a huge boost for me. I probably need to calculate the math, but it's been a really nice jump because he was
Okay.
doing, and I would say a non-optimized Google AdSense, right? So it was
Just
just
a
ads on the
standard.
site. Yeah, and no knock on him. It just wasn't his thing, right? To
Hmm.
be in there trying to figure that part out. So when I switched to Ezoic, I immediately saw a huge increase. I redesigned the site to a better look and feel, and to be faster. So I
Okay.
think he might have been running Cloudflare already, but there was a number of things where it was just slower. So as weirdly, my site is 90% traffic on desktop, which
Okay.
is rare these days.
Hmm.
And so, I had to speed it up so it's really fast. So if I think about the Ezoic dashboard, it's probably 94, 95% as far as speed goes. And then other things is just some basic and block and tackling as far as SEO goes, right? Is he didn't have a ton of pages indexed. The structure of it was different. And then I guess the other pieces, and it's alludes to what you're asking before, is like I also added data. Like I took the information he had, and with some of my experience that I already had, just kind of working in healthcare. And I say me, I have a team. I have developers and graphic designers that work for me that help me work on it. So as we redesigned it, we added different content and different linking structures and things like that he hadn't added. So all of that stuff has boosted traffic some, but also just boosted interaction on the page, like amount of page views each visitor gets.
Hmm.
All those things have gone up. So
Yeah, so you went in, you optimized, sounds like SEO, linking structure. You touched on design a little bit, and then running Ezoic instead of AdSense.
yeah.
Um, are those the main strategies you used, or are there any other strategies that you used once you purchased the site to build traffic more? Like newsletters, social. Can you touch on anything extra to what you just spoke on?
Yeah,
Is there
no,
anything?
up until this point, I haven't done it. I have plans for some of those things. I'm always, this site is high traffic, right?
Yep.
Maybe in the air, 2.5, 3 million page views a month. So I'm always leery of like, you don't want to upset the apple cart, and
Uh-huh.
so my
Totally
changes
understand.
are, yeah, I don't want to make huge changes. So I've incrementally made different things. Like even when I talk about indexing pages, it's slow. Uh, you know, and even the changes I change, wait to see what happens before I make a whole bunch of different changes. So no, I have plans to do different things like that, but I get a lot of traffic organically as well as just direct traffic. People have been using this site for years.
Hmm.
So my thing for that was, I don't have to upset that. I don't want to upset that, right? And I don't want to wake up a day and some mistake that I made causes me major issues. So I'll keep making incremental changes in order to grow it. And just like I said, my experience in healthcare, there's things I'm going to do to add to the site, but not necessarily the core where I need to keep tinkering with.
Yeah, totally understand that. And that's funny you mentioned that, because we tell publishers a lot of times, if it's not broken, don't fix it. That advice usually comes to surface every time Google does an update, because
Yeah,
people, when Google changes something, they want to tinker with their site, and we always tell them, do not change anything when Google is changing something, because then if your site drops in traffic, you won't be able to attribute it toward, you know if Google did something, you won't be able to tell because you changed your layout of your site or you changed your ad setup. You will never be able to attribute it to one or the other because you did
right.
something.
Yeah,
That's just a
somebody
small
changes it.
little. Yeah, exactly. And so, you know if I were a publisher trying to start a site that's kind of similar, like you said earlier, there's lots of sites that are uh, content that's like formed in a database where there's lists available with content like this in many, many different niches. Do you have any advice or words of wisdom for publishers who might want to create a lookup type tool in their respective niche, things that you've um, learned from and can pass along?
It's like you just went to a Kentucky Fried Chicken and asked for the secret recipe. Uh,
Yeah.
no, I mean, one of the things that I'm working on is looking at data sets, like I said, there's huge data sets available already. A couple examples would be if you're looking through the just government data sets, I think that's those datasets.gov or whatever, but they have tons of information that's just free out there that you can tap into. Obviously, you need some like database work in order to do that. But I think if people looked at those data sets, they get a bunch of aha moments. It's like, hey, how do I apply this to what I already know, or what my friends and family may be looking for, and turn that into something. Another place to look is like I said, some of the stuff requires developers and data sets, but that stuff's on Upwork or wherever you want to go to, where you can get somebody to work with you on that type of thing. But another one is like sometimes I look through like programmableweb.com,
Hmm.
and they have the list of all of the APIs available. So I'm thinking of like, how can I mash something up together, right? It might be sports scores and um, something, right? You know,
Hmm.
just I can't or don't want to say anything like randomly right now, but
Yeah, no, I
those type
totally
of
get it.
things. Like, there's so many APIs where people have made data available and easy to access. All of the Google APIs, all these other ones. Uh, you know, Trading is huge, right? Everybody's doing some type of trading or forex and things like that. There's tons of APIs out there, and is there a way that you can mash up data and give people an insight that's different than they could today, right? Or you know, yeah, I
Yeah,
mean,
that's a good way to
I think
put
when
it.
people look through that, I think you get aha moments. It's like, what's the data here, but what can I add just a little bit to it, and I got something totally new. So
Yeah, I think that's a really good way to put that, and I appreciate you sharing that with those watching. One last question in the same vein of your, with your tool, your site. Um, I've seen personally, and I've only been in the digital publishing space, at Ezoic for a little under 2 years. What do you think kind of the future holds of these kind of lookup tools, since we've seen over the past few years how Google has started pulling out a lot of different calculators, mortgage calculators, things, and putting it into the knowledge graph, where like these sites who in previous years might have had a ton of traffic now have had their calculator, built by Google, and now it's on the Google knowledge graph, and that people aren't clicking directly on that link anymore. Do you think that publishers can still, like you were saying, go through those databases, find aha moments, things that might not be easily duplicated by Google? Are there still opportunities for that, you see? Or do you think
yeah,
publishers can adapt and avoid that kind of fate that a lot of those early on calculators, they faced that in the past few years?
yeah. I mean, I don't appreciate you putting that kind of energy in the universe,
No, definitely
uh,
not.
but
I
I
think you're
was
good. I think you're good with yours. I don't think they're gonna.
and I do
Google's
think
not
I'm
gonna
good
take that.
only because I think I can't predict Google or even
Yeah,
understand or determine why they make some of those decisions. But I think it's they need a certain level of critical mass before they do that, right? So
yeah,
calculators is a good example, right? Calculators is hundreds of millions of searches, uh,
a
a
month. Yeah,
month or day, an hour, or whatever, right? So there's like I didn't even understand calculators as well as I did until I just started looking around. I'm like, these sites are getting crazy traffic. And then, as I, casually talking to friends, I'm like, you ever think about how you change, 30 centimeters to feet? And they're like, oh yeah, I do that all the time. And so I think, something like that was so big that Google, Google's goal is to keep you on Google, right? So it makes sense for that.
absolutely.
And a lot of these categories, I don't think it's worth their time and effort. Um, like maybe in the space of man, something specific to, uh, it could be finance, it could be whatever. You know, I don't think it'll be like cooking sites are big, right? Cooking sites
Yes,
get a lot of traffic. I don't think it's even though it's huge, it's still a specialty there that I don't think Google goes, well, here's how you make a chicken casserole. There's still opportunities there, and you know, I guess even I would say the calculator sites, right? So
hmm,
even if you take a hit, a lot of them are still doing very well,
yep,
right?
they
Oh,
are. They are.
and it's not like they're every day you got to go recalculate or do anything. They built it, they optimize, and it may have taken months and years, but they're still running. So if you went from $1.50, it hurts. but that's still a nice 50 cent that's coming in,
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you touched on something that like our CMO at Ezoic, Tyler, he mentions a lot to publishers. And I've seen him in videos too, where like you said, Google, they don't want to take the time and energy to do that. And in reality, you're right. If there's not enough of a critical mass for them to want to create that tool for the people to stay there, it's, Tyler says it, Google's not going to be writing content anytime soon. Like
Right.
they have great AI, great tools, and they're able to do all these things, and they have great data, but they're not going to get in the business of writing content anytime soon.
Yeah.
For those watching, that is where you know, that's your egg. You have content. We all have content.
Yeah.
Um, so
And thinking about what you just
yeah,
said,
go ahead,
even going
please.
even going back to my site, right? The data
Hmm.
changes, right? So that would require Google to be current, whatever the changes are, too. Not saying they couldn't or whatever, but I think that's true in a lot of these industries. Like there's certain things that are static, and there's things that are almost static, but they change. And if Google gets into that, they which they could, right? They got the brightest minds working on stuff, but it doesn't really move the needle for them. What's great for us is nothing for them, so I think that's what
Absolutely.
plays into much of this is like, yeah, they're not going to tap every space. And then the reality is in many of these spaces even that they've hopped into, they didn't, everybody didn't go away. It's like you
No.
got to adjust and do different things, right? So
It's like the lyric websites. There was that whole thing where
oh yeah.
lyric websites pushed back against Google because they started pulling those lyrics into the knowledge graph, and the lyric side of like, hey, that's not, you can't do that. And they went back and forth on that. And I think they came to some sort of conclusion. I can't remember, but I
And
did
even
have
and
a,
even that they just posted
they
partial of
still,
the lyrics, and you
yep,
still needed to click through the site. And in many places, even the knowledge graph, right? It shows a snippet, but a lot of times you still have to click through a site in order to see everything you need.
yep, that's very, very true. I had a whole section. Normally we have a whole section on like writing articles, writing content, but I'm assuming and I'll probably cut this out if it's not necessary, but with your site, it's just data entries, correct? It's not, do you have written content as well, or?
Yeah, not on that site. I don't have any
Okay.
like regular written content. It's all database driven.
Okay. And I know earlier you touched on monetization, how when you bought it, it was just like a simple AdSense setup, and now you're with Ezoic. Are there any other ways that you monetize now that you didn't in the beginning? Do you use anything else?
No, I don't. Honestly, my biggest effort, I only had the site 8 months now, 9 months. And I've seen a huge jump. Like I'm up probably from his run rate for the first 3 months, and then where I've ended, I'm probably up 200%, something crazy. And
Wow,
it's yeah, very
congrats.
nice. But a large of that's been working with Ezoic. I worked with Dan Hale and Ryan, and I'm constantly sending them messages like, "Hey, I thought about this. What about this?" And right, and most of it has worked well. We tried one thing, it didn't work well, and we went back, but we knew what the change was. So it was like,
Hmm.
and it was like, well, let's not do that. And we went back, and it's been fine or even better since. I went into the premium program with the Zoic. That's been good. So, I'm still in the first year of this particular site, and I have other ones
Yeah.
that I'm building and stuff like that. But in this particular site, just focusing on the Zoic and the changes that I can make there that are available, and the site itself, optimizing and Google Search Console and all those type of things has been enough. And like I said, I'm not making like massive. I don't need to multivariate test this thing at the same time and
Yeah.
break it all. So this is step by step.
Yeah. I thought of something when you were talking, and I know in the beginning when you mentioned those websites that you use to potentially shop around for sites, what, do you have any advice or things to keep an eye out for, maybe in terms of what are some key things that you can recognize are a site that you might be interested in, like based upon whatever things that you can recognize, or um like what are maybe some red flags of sites that you say they're not worth the headache Can you touch on either one of those?
Yeah, I can touch on both. So I'll answer the second one first,
Sure.
and
Yeah.
because I looked at the number and I've talked to brokers and things like that, and if I need to see a value add opportunity, like if a person has like done everything that I can find to do, and they're using the good ad network, the site's optimized, the content's rolling, and the only thing I can do is keep it rolling this, because these sites sell at some multiple, whatever you decide upon, right? It's going to be multiple of monthly revenue or yearly. And if I look at it and go, okay, well, they say it's 4x, and they go, then I got to just keep it and hope it goes to the 4 years. Like that's not a good site for me, right? I need to be able to shorten that time frame and say,
Hmm.
okay, if I do these things, I can grow either the monetization or the traffic, because it gets more monetization, or you know monetization through how the site works. And I think there's a number of opportunities out there. If all goes well, I should have one that I'm putting a letter of intent on the next day or two. So, but this one is much more. It is article writing. It needs
Hmm.
regular updates, but I see a huge opportunity. One, and I can drive a lot more traffic to it. And that speaks more to just my digital marketing experience, I think.
Hmm.
But I think these publishing these sites are hard, right? There's so many things
Yes.
you could be doing. You could have a list of 400 things of like, hey, I got to manage the Facebook page, create something for Pinterest pins, and I need to be optimizing. WordPress needs updates, all this different
Yeah.
type of stuff. And the list could be like, if I go back to uh, that my first experience, that's what it was. There was so much I'm trying to figure out, right? I'm trying to trade links with people, and I'm trying to figure out WordPress. I'm figuring out hosting. I mean, this is when I'm still installing it myself and fighting with plugins. Like, the experience today is not the WordPress what it was earlier, right? The plugins didn't work half the time, and you know, you, the the knowledge that's out there now, like you can Google WordPress, whatever, and figure it out. That stuff wasn't out there at that time. But I think the same thing is true today. Like, what are the core things you want to do? Because you can create a list of stuff to do when publishing these sites and drive yourself crazy, and all of it doesn't work. You can put a lot of effort into something that just doesn't pan out, right? You could create a Facebook group, and you could wait for that to circle the drain with negative comments and people posting their own sales ads. That you know what do you want to do on those sites? So when I look at a site, it has to be one, be the value add, and then the other one is just like, is this something I understand? Is it a
Hmm.
space that I know, right? Like, I've seen things like, there was one I looked at, it was like outdoor hunting and things like that. Like, I don't know anything about that, right? It could have
Yeah.
been a great deal, but I don't know where to take it further, because I'm like, I don't know that space, right? So it would have taken the learning curve of me trying to even figure out what the content would be and what it should be, would be too much. So I think it's what's the spaces that I know, and then how can I add value in order to make it more, make it a better property.
Yeah. No, that's I think that's really, really good advice. And my last question to you for this interview is, if you could go back and tell your old self any advice before ever touching a website, beginning your publishing journey, with what you know now, what would you say?
Mm. I would say if you have a content site, just be consistent, right? I think that beats all of, so even that what I just talked about, like a long list of things that you could be doing. If you have regular content, good content. I'm not just saying trashy 250, 500 word articles that you bought from some Upwork listing. But if you had
Hmm.
consistent content, I think those are the sites that win over time. Like I talk about the site I started in 2007. Like, it was a celebrity news content. So at this time, like 50 Cent was really popular. So and that whole genre, and I was just tired of posting about that stuff. Right, you're watching their lifestyles. Kim Kardashian was just starting to blow up. And it was just like, if I had to post another like red carpet and things like that. So I lost interest in that. But if I would have just kept going, a lot of publishers are going to follow. The web is littered with like 2-month-old blogs, right? And if you keep going, I think that wins out. Like, will it be $50 million site, who knows? But if you just keep going and you look up at these sites and you got 4, 5, 6 years worth of content, you know, you can probably, you guys as the advertisers, you can probably see the sites that they just can't. You keep publishing, and then, you know, and you slowly figure out all the stuff. Like, because if you create all this social media and you're doing all this other stuff, but you don't have any content, like, you know, you're hoping for the home run with one article. But if you just got that regular flow, then I think those are the sites that win over time.
Yeah. I think you hit on a lot of points there that publishers watching can take to heart, and we've seen it, like you said. I can see on the back end of all these sites, and it's really the ones who we pulled data from 2019 that showed that the fastest growing sites in terms of like revenue and traffic were the ones that published a larger amount of written content, compared, like the top 10% of websites that published X amount of articles compared to the lowest 10% is a big difference in between how successful they are. So I think that it's very true to what you speak of. Well, Brian, I appreciate you joining us today on Publisher Profiles. It was awesome getting to talk to you and learn about your digital publishing journey. So I will talk to you soon. Thanks so much for coming on.
Thanks, man. I appreciate you having me.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll talk to you later.
And that is it for this week's Publisher Profile. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Let me know what you thought of Brian's strategies and tips down below in the comments. I've also went ahead and put links in the description to the online marketplaces for buying and selling websites that Brian talked about in our interview. If you like this video, go ahead and give it a thumbs up down below. And if you want to watch more content like this, hit the big red subscribe button down in the corner. If you happen to miss my interview last week with Nick Johnson of homesnacks.com, I'll put a card to that at the end of this video. Next week's interview will be the last one before the new year. After the new year, I will be coming back with more publisher profiles, so I hope to see you next Tuesday.